Welcome back, Brony Nerds and Gamers. This is another episode of Quintessential Brony with Minecraft. You might notice that I'm in a much different spot than I was before. Long story short, I should have gathered my thoughts together before really starting this recording. I started rambling and really lost track of what I was saying because I was running away from zombies and such. And I think this kind of conversation is too hard to have with the kind of with the kind of problems that come from running around on the surface. So I figured I'll take a moment, gather my thoughts, and then I'll start recording again. So here we are. We're a little ways from where we were. We left the snowland, went back through the jungle, and I decided to hide out here for the night. I still have my bed, so I should be good. But we're just gonna make a little hidey hole for ourselves here until I can basically get all of my thoughts out, because there's a lot to talk about today. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, and if you don't follow me on Twitter, you should totally follow me on Twitter. I really should be saying that those of you who are following me on Twitter should subscribe to me here on YouTube, because since I have way more Twitter followers than I do YouTube subscribers, but that's not important. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, I had mentioned that today we were going to tackle the George Zimmerman, I don't even know what to call it right now, the situation, the George Zimmerman conversation. Obviously, it's an emotional issue for a lot of people. Everybody is talking about it right now. And at first, I wasn't going to really talk about it, but I guess I started getting rubbed the wrong way from some of the things I was seeing. There's a lot of accusations going on right now, and a lot of people who are freaking out. And I mean, wherever you turn, it was pretty much the only topic of conversation over the past 2 days was this trial. And I'm sure it will remain to be over the the coming weeks, since the whole situation's not even done yet. It's still going on. It's still a conversation that is being had, but basically I don't feel like it's the right conversation that's being had. I think a lot of people are talking about things that don't matter much in the long run, and some people are just coming up with ideas that are just plain wrong. And that's pretty much why I decided, for better or for worse, I'm going to actually have this conversation with you guys, since that's what I plan to do on this this Let's Play of Minecraft in the first place. Well, first things first, when I decided I wanted to do this, I decided to get all the facts I could, as best I could. I understand there might be things that I'm not going to say that are true, and there might be, hopefully there's nothing that I say that's blatantly not true, but there might be something that I say that's not entirely true, and obviously not intentionally untrue, but untrue only because I lack the information needed to best describe. Basically, anything that I say is going to be based mostly on the facts that I've observed so far, and not on the fact that I was in the trial. I'm not a well-known source for the trial. I followed it just the same as most people did on the news. I followed it since it first happened. Gosh, how many months or even years ago, and like a lot of people, I put it on the back burner until the trial actually happened, because I didn't want to come up with any kind of preconceived notion. And that's where this decision came from to actually do this. Was all of the preconceived notions that were happening. I started to see people all over basically come up with the idea that their point of view on this entire situation was the only right one, and that there couldn't possibly be another explanation. I think people forget how fragile a situation this is. It is horrible. I'm a single guy, so I couldn't possibly know what it's like to have a child, and I couldn't possibly know what it feels like to lose a child. In fact, to be honest, I've not had a friend die either. So for Rachel, who was Trayvon Martin's friend that he was on the phone with, I don't even know how she would feel at this moment. And I'm not talking about this because I believe that I have a point of view that relates to the people involved. I'm wanting to talk about this because I have a point of view that relates to you, my viewers. Because I think this is not something that gets covered in My Little Pony. It's not. And I'm not covering it because I think there's a lesson to learn that My Little Pony can teach us. I want to talk about it just because I think it's important. And that's about the size of it. So, where to start? Well, first, let's start with the trial itself. George Zimmerman gets acquitted. And if you don't know what that means, it means that he is found innocent of all crimes. No matter, all crimes. Every single one. They find that he did nothing wrong. Or at least he did nothing wrong to the charges that were put against him. In this case, George Zimmerman was charged. Excuse me. I'm just trying to figure this out here. Why am I having such an issue? There we go. Throw some of that in there. And in this case, the charges that were brought against him were second-degree murder and voluntary manslaughter, or involuntary manslaughter, or I kept hearing voluntary manslaughter, and I was like, well, is it voluntary manslaughter? I mean, basically that means you kill someone in the act of committing another felony. I don't know. I think someone has called it something different before, but if that's what it's called, that's what it's called. But those were the two charges that were brought against him. The first was second-degree murder, which he was first charged with, and the other charge was brought later by the prosecution. Basically, they petitioned the judge and said, listen, could we also include lesser charges with this? And the judge said yes. Now, in this case, a lot of people are angry. And I guess it's rightfully so. Because a lot of people are confused as to how their point of view of how they believe things happened is being disagreed on. Now, I am not saying, and I'm not going to say, that this acquittal stands to reason that George Zimmerman did not do what he was charged for, because, well, to be honest, I don't share that point of view, and I'm not going to get into the conversation of any kind of outrage of the situation. I do have a point of view of how I feel things went down, but that's not important. Because we have a trial system that basically says that if you are tried with a crime, you are judged by a jury of your peers in this case, or you can also be tried by a judge in a civil court, or not a civil court, in a lesser court. I'm not entirely sure about the how a judge only hearing goes, but you are judged by a jury of your peers, and that's in our United States Constitution. In this case, the jury did not find him guilty. Well, I mean, we have one juror that's come out and started to say that there wasn't enough evidence, but she's also said that that she just believed wholeheartedly that George Zimmerman did not do the thing he did. I think it's a moot point. I think it is a really a moot point right now about whether he actually did or did not do it. A jury of his peers has found him not guilty. And the reason why is because, and this was explicitly stated in the court by the judge, that the jury had to find him guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. They had to find him guilty for no other reason than the absolute truth would have to be. The problem with this case from the very first day it became a big deal was that there just wasn't enough evidence. There just wasn't enough people around that was able to see what happened. That had always been the issue. And it would be nice to say that, well, presumably he really did do it. Well, I would agree. But unfortunately, I'm not the jury. And here's the thing. Even if I was the jury, the fact is, there just isn't. There's just not enough evidence to say, beyond any shadow of a doubt. You understand, I really do think he did. But if you were to put my life on the line and ask me, did he do it? Well, then it's a completely different scenario then. Because it's not just my word against his, it's my life against his. I couldn't really put my life on the line to say that he is actually guilty of second-degree murder or in committing another felony while killing Trayvon Martin. Because it's not about my personal feelings. It's about what actually happened. And I think that's why I wanted to talk about this, because a lot of people are letting their own personal feelings get in the way of the problem with this case from the very beginning. The problem with the case from the very beginning has always been that there's a lot of prejudice that goes behind this case. For those who believe that, that race does not play a part in all of this, it does. It absolutely does. But it doesn't play a part in this because George Zimmerman undoubtedly went after Trayvon Martin because he was black. He went after Trayvon Martin. He did profile him, but it wasn't because he was black. Or at least we don't know whether or not it was because he was black. He very well, it might have very well been because he was a kid. For those of you who are kids, you know how it feels to be a kid and to be untrusted by others who are adults. If George Zimmerman thought he was a kid and thought some young whippersnapper was in his neighborhood and he wanted to find out why, well then of course he would go after him. And yeah, it would be wrong. But there's no crime in being a dumbass or a douchebag, and there's no crime in being an asshole. In this case, it's undoubtedly that George Zimmerman thought he was doing the right thing. And I'm willing to buy that because any person is really in the mindset that they want and are willing to do the right thing. The problem has always been is that wanting to do the right thing and actually doing the right thing have always been two different things. Just because George Zimmerman had a gumption that possibly Trayvon Martin shouldn't have been there, didn't mean he shouldn't have been. But that doesn't make a man guilty of second-degree murder. That makes him guilty of, well, being an asshole. He wasn't on trial for racially or non-racially profiling Trayvon Martin in any way. He wasn't on trial for that. He was on trial for second-degree murder. And by extension, he was also on trial for voluntary manslaughter. And it comes down to that, really, you cannot convict him of that if there are no witnesses. It's impossible to say, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's impossible to say beyond a shadow of a doubt if anything ever happens unless you're actually there. But our jury system is not that literal. It is based on the views of the jury, and it does come down to a, well, if the jury bites your story, then they'll side with you. And in this case, they did. They bought George Zimmerman's side of the story and said, yeah, we believe that you were acting in the best interest of the community, that you didn't start the fight. In the end, that is what it comes down to. It's not about, I got my handy dandy tool here. Oh, excuse me. Now, as I said, just because I don't believe he could have been easily convicted of the crime doesn't mean I don't believe that he did. But even I have to admit that, you know, had I not been previously aware of the case before the trial had begun, if I had not been biased before the case, I probably would have seen the evidence presented, and I probably would have sided with the jury too. Not because I had a predisposition to Zimmerman. He does look like a guilty motherfucker, and certainly after hearing the evidence, had I have been in the jury's shoes, I certainly would have suspected that that George Zimmerman did in fact go after Trayvon Martin. But what it comes down to is that nobody really knows who threw the first punch. If Trayvon Martin threw the first punch, then it really does come down to, well, Florida's stand your ground laws, which has been one of the center points about this entire trial, is that law that says that in Florida, if someone comes after you with violent force, you may respond to that force if you feel that your life is threatened, and you may do so with the use of a weapon. And that is what I feel is the problem. It's not because a black guy was killed in Florida, and it's not because Florida is an especially racist state, which it very well may be, and that might not, you know, I don't know anyone from Florida, so I can't say, and I'm not going to say, because as I said before, it's not the case. I mean, no, it's not. It's not that it's not the case, but it's a moot point. Whether or not there is racism in Florida, or whether or not George Zimmerman did commit this crime as he's accused. But because of how this law was structured in the first place, there's just no way to prove whether or not someone was defending themselves when there's no witnesses. And it really wouldn't, I guess the point is, it really wouldn't have mattered even if there wasn't a stand your ground law, except that it would have been a lot less believable that George Zimmerman had to defend himself against an unarmed teenager. He would have had to also make the case that he was defending himself against an armed teenager. And since the teenager wasn't armed, since Trayvon Martin obviously wasn't armed, then, you know, it would have been pretty much impossible to prove that. But the problem isn't that whether or not stand your ground is the precedent. It's the fact that nobody, well, not nobody, but that the jury bought George Zimmerman's story and believed him. And it is upsetting, and I really wish that wasn't the case, but it's over. It's done with. He, for all intents and purposes, on the charge of murder, he's scot-free. Which brings me to my next point. People all over, and for good reasons, are really going all out on this topic. Media is covering it 24/7. Groups are throwing protests and rallies all over the country. And it is a serious conversation we need to have, because there certainly is racism in America. It's not gone. Every one of us has the inclination to be racist. Even I can. I mean, I grew up in Arkansas, so believe me, I'm sure there are plenty of times that I am racist and I don't even realize it. But this isn't about whether or not George Zimmerman was racist. And it's certainly not an issue of whether or not the jury or this judge was racist. It comes down to, are we going to move on from this and tackle the bigger issue of, we have laws in our country, like the Stand Your Ground law, which blanketly protect people who otherwise should not be defending themselves with an armed weapon against an unarmed teenager. In Illinois, we do have self-defense laws, which come down to, if someone comes at you with a gun, or in some cases a knife, you are well within your rights to defend yourself with a similarly lethal weapon. And that works fine, but in Chicago, or Illinois, really, the problem is that the reasons why that law is there is because we have gangs that are in our streets in Chicago who basically start gang fights with each other. And while no one is charged, that's only because that they get away and nobody rats them out. Now, to be clear, I don't live in Chicago, but trust me, I know the situation there. I have friends who live in Chicago who will tell you for sure that that this kind of stuff does happen. But here's two things that I've been seeing right now with this case that have really just given me an uneasy stomach about the whole situation. You have people on the right, and this issue is divided between right and left on the American political spectrum, and I will get into that in a moment. But on the right, you have people who are celebrating this case, saying this is a great moment for American freedom and liberty, that a man has a right to defend himself from an attacker by any means necessary. And you have people on the left who are calling this the fall of our country and our nation, and that we are, I don't know, somehow going to perish because one guy got off the hook. In the end, everyone is fighting so vehemently for what they believe is, oh shit. Oh! Oh. Where do I respond to? Oh no. Oh. Oh boy. So, just ignoring that then. We'll just start over. Here. Sorry. I'm a little perturbed at the moment because I died. What was I just saying? Okay. Everyone is fighting vehemently for what they think is right. And I totally respect that. But there are so many people that are just going fucking berserk. You have people who are protesting, and let me put this straight. Not all the people protesting are violent, but the fact that there is anybody who is starting a violent protest about this is shocking. This isn't the first time that someone has been convicted of a crime that they didn't commit, or in Trayvon Martin's case, or in George Zimmerman's case, been acquitted of a crime that they did commit. The fact is, we can believe so vehemently that George Zimmerman is guilty, and I do. I certainly would not want to have him in my living room. But you can't convict a man of a crime that you can't prove. And you can't prove a crime that nobody actually saw. So I want to say this to everybody who is mad about this. If you want to make sure this doesn't happen again, get with your communities. When something as crazy is going on, don't just hide in your kitchens in your nice suburban neighborhoods and wonder if it will just stop. This is a case of a terrible incident being taken advantage of by everybody across the spectrum. You have people wanting to call in the Department of Justice to file a civil lawsuit against George Zimmerman. Now, I'm not a lawyer myself, but on what grounds are you going to charge him? Because he profiled someone. Yeah. Can you prove that he profiled him undoubtedly by race? I don't think so. I really don't think so. It's very possible that was the case, but I don't think it's provable. And speaking as someone who vehemently believes that he did profile Trayvon Martin, I don't think you'd be able to sell to me that without a doubt he profiled him based on his race. He may very well have profiled him because he was a kid, or because he didn't know him. Now, I don't think there's anyone who is, as I believe the one of the attorneys involved in the case, and I don't remember if it was the defense or the prosecution. Might have been the defense attorney actually, who said that in this case there were no winners, and that is absolutely true, because Trayvon Martin is still dead, George Zimmerman is free, and in the end, nobody really knows anything. The funny thing about all of this is that what if Trayvon Martin had been put on trial? And I think if Trayvon Martin had been put on trial, then things, well, I guess they might have been more justified depending on the outcome. Because what's really funny about our justice system is that one person can be charged of a crime of killing another person, found not guilty of it, but the person who got killed can also not be charged with a crime. Because you can't prove that person did it either. I mean, I don't want to downplay the seriousness of the situation, but it's like if you had two people who just started pushing and shoving each other, and suddenly everyone started noticing, and then each of them started saying, well, he pushed me first. Well, did anyone see it? No. Okay. Then how do you know who pushed who first? Just stop your fighting. Stop pushing and shoving each other. In any other case where if it didn't involve someone's death, if people were pushing and shoving, both of them would just be arrested. Now, in the end, that is where I believe the anger should be. It shouldn't be in the fact that George Zimmerman was acquitted. Regardless of whether the fact he did or did not do the thing he's charged for, it is incredibly infuriating that he was not arrested. And the reason why I find that infuriating is that even if you have a ridiculous law like Stand Your Ground that protects people on the merits that, well, they did it to protect themselves. Even if you have that, unless you can prove it, how is that a defense that just anyone can take? And if it's a defense that anyone can take, how are you even able to enforce it? One of the things that really upset me is that another story came out about another person who was just sentenced to 20 years because they fired their shot into the air, not harming anyone, but were trying to defend themselves against an attacker. The attacker, which was their husband. So how do you enforce a law that you literally can't enforce it? You can't enforce it because anyone can claim it, and the only reason that anyone would be arrested for it is if the particular officer had the inclination to believe that they were guilty of it. And that's not how anything should be run. And also, I'm getting pretty hungry. Not myself, but my character. Come here, chicken. No, we're not gonna eat raw chicken. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna real quick make a crafting table for ourselves. Put it right here. Make some sticks. Gosh, we're starting the whole thing over again right from the beginning, aren't we? What was I just saying? Oh. When it comes to this case, problem is that if anyone can use this defense to say that they were defending themselves, then who couldn't? If I can just say, well, you know, someone came up on me, I felt threatened, and I decided to shoot them. I think what we've learned here is that, for the love of Pete, make yourself a sword. Let's see if I can talk over the rain. Now I know that the law is not as simple as that. Even with this blanket kind of law, like stand your ground. Because if it really was so simple as that, then, you know, the other person that got convicted for 20 years wouldn't have been convicted on the grounds that they had the stand your ground law to defend them. What it comes down to is whether or not a jury believes your story. Which unfortunately is how our justice system is supposed to work. John Oliver on The Daily Show put it one way when he said, the problem isn't that this is a sign that our system is not working, but it is a sign that the system is absolutely working, and that's what's wrong. In this case, what is shown by both the George Zimmerman trial and by the other case, and by really any of these cases. It's not just George Zimmerman. It's Chicago. It's New York. It's Florida. It's Texas. It's everything. And it's not relegated. The problem isn't relegated strictly to African Americans or to Hispanics, but it is a problem for everybody, whether you're white, black, Hispanic. I mean, heck, if you're gay, you have the same problems with discrimination and bigotry that, you know, most people have to deal with. And everyone's, I guess, this is maybe not the best phrase for it, but everyone's cup of tea is different. Everyone pretty much has a different amount of discrimination that they have to deal with in their life. And certainly for someone like me, a white American male in his late 20s, I have very little, if any, discrimination to deal with. And I realize that. But as a Brony, I am well aware of the discrimination that exists for someone like me. Well, I suppose in the end we can say that we can talk about it until we're blue in the face, but it really won't change anything. And well, the fact is that's probably true. We could absolutely talk about all of this until we are blue in the face. And it won't it won't change the fact that Trayvon Martin is dead. And in the case of our justice system, it won't change the fact that George Zimmerman is guilty. Until someone can actually bring forward evidence, actual evidence, to say, look, here is undeniable fact and truth that George Zimmerman murdered Trayvon Martin. Unless someone's going to bring up evidence like that, it's not going to change that. It is a terrible situation. I don't agree with it. But the problem now isn't to focus on George Zimmerman. It's to focus on our communities. And I'm making this statement not just for the people I disagree with. I'm making this statement for the people even I do agree with. For those who are getting, I guess the word would be gung ho. But for those who are focusing on George Zimmerman, you know, what do you want to accomplish? I mean, if you have evidence to show that something might have been missing and George Zimmerman is actually guilty, well, all right, bring it up. But if you're just trying to make the case that you think or feel that it's wrong, which you're entitled to, because I agree with you. But if you want to start changing things, you got to start talking to the people that are actually in charge. Because in the end, what it comes down to is that the problem we have isn't that Florida's judicial system is broken, but that we are very much uninterested in the rulings of, well, I guess our legislators in this case. I think I have to agree on one point where, and this has been taken out of context, and this has been screwed around, but I think the president, when he said that people need to remain calm, I think that is what needs to happen. Yeah, this is a terrible situation. I think even the president understands that. But I think the president also understands that regardless of how sad of a situation this is, you can't change things because you feel that they're wrong. You have to actually prove it. Now, if only we could use that kind of mentality with other things that cause us problems. For example, if you disagree with natural gas, good. Then we need to prove why natural gas is dangerous. And if you believe that certain laws in our legislative systems are bad, good. Start bringing them up. And when the votes start coming out for these propositions, and when your legislators start voting on them, don't just ignore it. If you have a problem with something, stop it before it becomes a law. Well, that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. I wish, again, we could talk about this until we're blue in the face and probably wouldn't get anywhere. And in the end, I don't think anyone's going to agree any more or less. think anyone's going to agree any more or less on anything that's going on. But I hope that in the future we just try to make things work a little better. I am, as always, your Quintessential Brony, Drummy. And tune in again next time here on Minecraft, where hopefully I don't die. And we will tackle another issue next time. If you'd like me to discuss anything particularly, or if you have a thought or comment, if you liked this video, leave a like below. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'm more than willing to do so. But until next time, good night.